And hello, good people of the internet. It is I, Tommy Kelly, and this is Adventures in Woo-Woo. And this episode is the monthly question and answer session that we do for people over on Patreon. Well, we do for everyone, but the people on Patreon get to ask the questions. And this month we have 5 questions, so it shouldn't take us too long to get through them all, although I've said that before, and I was wrong. So we'll go straight into them. So, merrily, now that what will you say? Now that Mercury retrograde is over, even mention Mercury retrograde, my med stops working. What changes do you make in your magic, art, personal work during this time, if any? Merrily, I have to say that I don't pay any attention to it whatsoever, and I don't make any changes or do anything different. The reason being is that I have noticed that the effects that people normally subscribe to or relate to Mercury in retrograde kind of happens to me on and off, whether Mercury is in retrograde or not, and there didn't seem to be any sort of correlation between the planet's position and what was going on in my life. Those type of things that Mercury retrograde have, like things breaking down, delays, all of that kind of stuff, is something that's kind of, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I seem to have an exaggerated version of it. It's something that's always kind of around me and seems to be particularly dependent on my mood. In two ways. If I'm in a bad mood, things will break as if to spite me. If I'm in a rush or I want to get something, out of the way, something done so I can have, say, some free time later or something like that, then it seems as if the world wants to spite me and things will stop working. But there has to be a kind of a mood of, I suppose, rushing or impatience or something like that. But also the opposite, if I'm feeling really good, and I can't wait till this weekend, I'm going to get some recording done, some music, or we're going to do whatever, and that can also, things can fall apart because of that. Now the problem, of course, with all this is it doesn't happen every time, because I'd never get anything done if that was the case, but it's happened a significant amount of times that there's definitely a pattern in it, and it has happened around other people that other people have noticed it's happening to me. Now, I don't want to say I was born under a bad star or that I'm cursed or anything. I don't think it's anything like that. I think there's obviously an element of self-sabotage going on it on a psychological level, where I probably overplay things, in that the universe doesn't probably go out of its way to spite me quite as much as I think. But there's probably a magical resonance, vibratory, or whatever non-new age crap word there is for that I also, in some sense, by my emanations, are causing these things too. It goes back to the thing I've mentioned a few times about this, how sigils or magic in general, but mostly sigils work for me, that it's about 60% of the time they'll work. And the less I care about the outcome, the more that percentage go up, and the more I care about the outcome, the less that'll go down to very, very, very low if I really want something. And so there seems to be some sort of block within me that I've been working on steadily over the years, and I've got an awful lot better. And I usually find that there's some area or something in my life that I'm not necessarily connected to the thing I'm doing magic for, say, but until that's kind of resolved, that everything is kind of put on hold, or the tap is switched off, there's no flow or whatever. So I know people who absolutely and utterly go for the Mercury retrograde stuff, and it seems to work out in their life. I would say go for this if it works for you, but just be aware of bringing it on to yourself and fulfilling your own prophecy, in that if you know that next Thursday the things are likely to go bad because of Mercury, there is a chance that you'll make them go bad on whatever level you're working on. But that old expression, millionaires don't believe in astrology, but billionaires do. And I have many friends who are certain and completely convinced and use astrology so much so that even though it's not personally, doesn't grab me, I don't discount it in any fashion at all. I'm very susceptible to doom predictions and adhering to them. That if say I got a card reading, or it was like I knew Mercury was going to be in retrograde, it'll affect my mood immediately, or it will colour the whole thing, whether or not it's a fact or not. So I tend to avoid it altogether. And so far, it hasn't worked out too bad for me, for the most part. Rory, how is the sigil project going for you? Have you noticed any changes, magical or mundane, since you started doing the sigil a day challenge? So today's day 9 as I record this, and I assume it's going to be posted up today. And it's going well. It's like really the response to it has been massive, you know, compared to the other kind of things that we've done before, like say study groups or book clubs or the Star Ruby challenge or anything like that. This one seems to have really got people on board. And even after the initial couple of first days where you find that most people are on it and they kind of wane out after that, the waning out has been a lot less than previous things as well. So there's still loads of people still involved. So that's quite nice, and it's great to see people doing magic. And I'll come back to the doing magic thing in a question that's down below. For me, I was thinking about it today. Not one of my sigils has come true yet, or has manifested, or appeared, or whatever is the correct word for it. But they're in such a way that it's not, there's no necessarily a deadline to them anyway. So it's not as if any of them have failed either. Like, it's not as if I said, I want this by Saturday. And I know there's talk, and I've said probably myself, not probably, I have said numerous times before that you should have a bit more, you know, a bit more coherent idea of your magic or your intent, so that you know when it works. You know, you're not confused when something happens to where you go, is that the magic? Is that the thing? In the sense, if you say, I want more money, and someone gives you 50 cents, you go, well, is that the sigil? Or you know, it is more money, but you know, so there's this kind of loose, kind of, I suppose, incoherent resolution that you don't know whether it is or not. But there's also the kind of the idea that you can have things to a bit more open-ended and a bit more. And the whole project for me is to re-enchant my world in a greater way, because I kind of had dropped the kind of practical magical element of it stuff. Again, I'll come back to that in a minute. And so it's more to re-enchant, so an overall kind of feeling of doing magic, being surrounded by magic, having a magical outlook, having magical thoughts, all of that kind of thing. So from that point of view, it certainly has the doing a daily magic practice has achieved and all that. But as my actual targets, they haven't as yet manifested. Apart from maybe one, but again, it's in flux, so it's hard to know. Monday, yeah, it was interesting because Spud also pointed out that he had been contacted by old friends that were significant in parts of his life, and that did happen to me very quick into the thing. So that's something that mundanely, I suppose you could say, was an effect that both of us kind of had. So that was interesting. There's probably more that I'm not realising. You know, when you're in the middle of something, it's very hard to kind of really understand. It's only when you look back that you will not understand it, but see what was going on, or see the kind of bigger picture around it. I suppose the Patrick Harper stuff that I talked about in the recent podcast with Spud, where his books, Daimonic Reality, and you see there's two names for the soul one. The Secret Guide to the Soul, I think is what it's called, or The Secret History of the Soul, or something like that. Been reading them, and I started reading one of his fiction books, The Good People, which is really good too. And that has definitely created a magic kind of enchantment around me and in my kind of life. And that kind of happened around doing the sigils, but other things as well. So yeah, good, I'm enjoying it, and definitely glad that people are too. Jason, what do you think the effect of group magic is versus solo practice? Is it stronger, bunny ears, or more effective, bunny ears, in some way? If so, why would you say it is? Does the presence of a difference there put some limit on what can be accomplished as a solo practitioner? Well, I think there's good and bad to solo versus group. Like, I mean, that old thing of a zebra. A zebra is a horse that has been designed by a committee, which you know, that it's not quite a horse, it's not quite whatever it is. Or I suppose you could make it much worse than that. You could say that, like, you know, I don't know. An elephant is a horse designed by committee, and that it's not really what it's meant to be. And you can get an element of that, and by that I mean a lack of focus, or a lack of clarity, and a lack of direction, you know, singular pointed direction with group work. Unless you have very much a central figure, or a central idea, or a central goal from the outset. But even you can see from the way people like to do the challenges, like even going back to the half-peeled orange challenge that we did in CMG for a long while. I did a few times since, and you can see how quickly people see it and change the outcome, and change the goal, and change the direction, and change the kind of nature of the group work. And it's very hard that you can start, not very hard, but you start with this core idea, this is what we're going to do, and immediately as soon as it kind of hits the people, it becomes loads of different ideas. And so the kind of coherency and the direction and the the main drive or the single pointedness immediately evaporates, or not evaporates, but separates into like loads of little synapses, it goes off into the thing, which, in a kind of, if you're going for like a ripple effect thing, is great, because it affects everyone in a different way rather than kind of forcing people into a particular paradigm or perspective or something like that, But if you were doing a singular pointed wanted something, like say something like, I don't know, like something like the political magic that was going on around the elections and stuff like that, or even before that, where you had stuff like the bind Trump thing. And again, it's kind of hard. How do you know if that worked or not? Well, I mean, he certainly didn't get a second term. He didn't get impeached. Or he got impeached, but he seems to have no repercussions from it. So it's hard to know if that worked. And is that because like there was a fairly coherent kind of thing with binding Trump, say? But what does that mean? Because binding to me might mean something different to you, different to him, to her, to them, to whatever. And so when it has that kind of synapse ripple effect, does it lose a bit of coherency and a bit of direction and something, and does it make it less, while it makes it, in a sense, more powerful because there's more people doing it, is the target watered down in some way? That's just, it would be concern for me going by the different kind of, say, magical group works that I've done. But we've also done the Patron Astral Temple, and that seems to have certainly benefit from group people, so much so that there's like, I think Crow is basically the attendant on it now. I haven't been there in a while, and it's still there, and people have found stuff that other people have left in that very kind of classical astral temple type fashion. And so, is it stronger or more effective? It can be stronger. Group work can be stronger or more effective in some ways, whereas solo work can be definitely stronger and more effective in other ways too. It's kind of different, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I don't think one person doing a solo thing could probably really affect, a huge political change. That said, you do have people who have, in a sense, by themselves affected massive change. Like say Gandhi, although he's a, problematic figure as well. Well, everyone kind of is, I suppose. No one's perfect. But, certain people who have like literally changed the world by their own kind of self. But even in that, like Gandhi did it by groups. That people surrounded him, and the power of all of that. So, So I'd say the limit would be that there probably is a certain limit to affecting other people and global things that you can't really possibly achieve as a solo practitioner, unless you're really high order, like you're really top class. And even the top of the top class people that I have interacted with couldn't do it to the level of, what a kind of a movement could do, or an entire religion or a cultural phenomenon could do, like public opinion. I don't think it's solo. Well, that's interesting though, now that I say that, when you look at someone like Edward Bernays, who orchestrated public opinion to get what he wants. So one man changing everyone, get it? Jason, I think the answer is yes and no, both and all of the things. I think it can be, there's plus and minuses for all of these things, and it all depends on your target and what you're trying to do. What do you think? What's your thoughts on it? I certainly enjoy group work, but I've never actually done, I suppose, group working in real life. I've done it virtually, but not in real life, so I would have to see what that would feel like. Cobra, what are your thoughts on the idea that heavy emotions, be it great sorrow or great joy, can leave an impression on a given place? Do you think there's merit to the idea, and if so, have you been anywhere in particular that you experienced such an occurrence? I do think there's merit to the idea, but I think there's also merit to it being not just one place or thing. I think people can do it, and we know the type of thing I'm talking about is that, if you go to a museum or a house or and you see, and this is a great person's chair that he sat in when he wrote the particular book, or he wrote some sort of law or something like that, and it seems to be imbued with it's more than just a chair. You know, even if there was two chairs sitting beside each other, or exactly the same in design and nature, but one was used by Aleister Crowley and one was used by Frank Connolly, whoever Frank Connolly is, and you know, there would seem to be more heaviness or weight to the Crowley one, but only, like, maybe only by the fact that you bring that. But I mean, all of this is by the fact that humans bring it. You know, so if you look at something, let's say you go to look at like Auschwitz, and I've never been to Auschwitz, by all accounts, it's a very eerie type place. And like, is that because we know the history of it and we know what went on there and we have a kind of an idea around it, or does it have a heaviness itself? I would say both, because I think it can make an impact astrally or whatever, energetically, etherically. I certainly do think that. But I don't. What I'm trying to say is I'm trying to elevate the fact that humans do it. I think that's not a way to dismiss it, in that, you know, only because we know about it that we're creating this. But like, that's what we do. We're meaning-making machines. It seems to be one of the functions that we have here. I've been to places. I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, I probably should have read these questions, I suppose, so that I could have more of a thought. One of the most amazing places I've ever been in my life, where it was proper breathtaking, was the Sistine Chapel, and it was just like, how often I've seen those images and how often, you know, I'm familiar with the thing, until I was there and looking up at and seeing how the perspective worked, how, you know, the whole kind of ambience, you know, even though you're surrounded by whatever 100 people or whatever, it just was absolutely and utterly breathtaking, and like a proper awareness of being around a genius, or, you know, it was just immense. My sister went previous to that, and we got talking about it after I went, whatever, and she just thought it was terrible. She was so let down. She goes, oh, when I got there, it was the biggest letdown in the world. I didn't find it impressive at all. And this is, my sister's a very cultured woman. It's not that, you know, she wouldn't appreciate a good painting or whatever. It's not in that realm at all. But it's interesting that that you know, people can have a different reaction to something. You know, something so profound for one is not. And so I suppose the question is, can there be an inherent objective feel to a place? Maybe. I would have to have a think about it to see if I've ever been somewhere where I got a bad feeling about it or a good feeling about it, and then found out later the story to it. There's bound to be, isn't there? Like, I mean, it's bound to be. Yeah, so it's one I'll have to think about, and maybe we'll discuss a bit further on the Discord or something, and around it, because I'm sure there's places that people have come across that, you know, have had these kind of objective vibes to them. Christopher, how, if at all, has your Magia practice changed over time? Well, Christopher, my Magia practice currently is on hold, and I've stopped it because I found, and this, I want to preempt this by saying this is totally on me. This is all to do with me. This is not any kind of evaluation of the Magia practice, or, you know, in that it's me. It's just totally my experience of it, my thing of it, and not a reflection on Alan Chapman or the Magia or anyone involved. They're all wonderful and it's great teaching. But what I found for me is that it was making me more contracted rather than making me unfold. It was kind of, I was finding that I was missing a kind of creativity to it. There's, you know, within the kind of bounds of what the whole thing is, there's, you know, very specific practices done in a very specific way to get a very specific outcome. And I'm not necessarily that enamored with the outcome that you get from that, in that the goal being awakening. And I found that what was happening, that it was kind of stifling, in a sense, my creativity. It was like stifling my moods. I wasn't doing any practical magic at all. It was kind of getting me in a position of kind of almost more restricted than expansive. And I got into magic to be expansive. I get into kind of spiritual thought to be more expansive. I could do art to be more expansive. I do music to be more expansive. I make podcasts and videos to widen my kind of view of things. and my understanding and this kind of thing. And it's just from where I am in the world, in my mind and all that, I found that the Magia stuff was making me become a bit contracted and a bit too single-pointed and a bit kind of feeling this is right and that is wrong, rather than the chaos magic thing of, nothing is true, everything is permitted, that there seemed to be an actual permitted and not permitted idea about the world, idea about creation, idea about how to conduct yourself, even down to what clothes you should wear, what TV shows you should watch, and what type of media you should read. And I wanted to get back more. I wanted to re-enchant. I wanted to reinvigorate magic. I wanted to feel magical, and I didn't feel magical at all. And there's no practical magic in Magia other than, say, the binding, which is an argument that could be made, of course, that binding is a very practical magic, and of course it is. But by practical magic, I mean like what we're doing with the sigil stuff. Actually trying to do things, change the world, change your world, become more creative, write better stories, all of these type of stuff. And I was reading the Patrick Harper book, and he was talking about the meditation kind of element, and he says an awful lot of the kind of meditation stuff, the mindfulness and the noting and this kind of single-pointedness of trying to, in a sense, not shut down your brain. That's not right. That's not fair. But kind of, contract, in a sense, to a single point, to a single thing, or at least be aware of what's going on. It's kind of, in a sense, and I find it anyway, opposite to a kind of visionary approach, a creative approach. And I wanted to sit with a bit more kind of stuff like journeying, shamanic journeying, or active imagination, visionary stuff, and because that kind of the Magia stuff, for me, speaking 100% just for me, not for anyone else, this is my experience of it. Other people certainly don't feel this way. I felt it was all contracting in on itself, and for me, I want to expand, and I want to spend a bit of time being a bit more visionary and stuff like that, and and I've spoken in the podcast with Spud, the worldview kind of thing of this this Kingsleyan worldview, Peter Kingsley worldview of that's prevalent and around the whole kind of Magia thing. Even if it's true, I want to reject because it makes me unhappy and it makes me sad and it makes my life harder to live. And of course, the answer to that from the Magia perspective is neither to deal with it or run away from it, it's to go through it. But there's an indulgence, I find, in this kind of worldview that at least I find hard to sustain over a long period of time without resulting in hopelessness, weariness, disdain for life, disdain for, ourselves and all this, and that kind of, and I prefer Grant Morrison's outlook on the world. And whether it's true or not, I'm a chaos magician. I get to decide what's true, and so that's what I've decided is true. And so I just found the whole thing was bringing me down a bit, and I need to spend some time not that. Again, I want to reiterate my opinion, my experience of it. Other people have been doing the Magia stuff have completely unfolded and gone in a different, the opposite, had the opposite experience, had a wonderful experience, find it absolutely expansive and visionary and all of these things. And so it's me I'm talking about rather than the actual teaching itself. Because please do, I know, Christopher, you're doing it, so please don't let my kind of experience of it is probably, not the experience of most people who are doing it. In fact, going by the reports and the feedback and stuff that I've seen, it's certainly my experience is the opposite of what most people are getting. So yeah, well, my practice changed over time. I've stopped doing it for the time being. That's the best. That's the actual practices. I'm not doing the fire practice, the Beloved or Underworld. Not that I did an awful lot of Underworld. And the binding stuff, I am doing a similar type thing, but in my own way. Because I was stuck in some of the bindings, I just couldn't get through them, and didn't seem to be making sense. And so I want want to go in a different direction for a while. And I probably will come back as I do. And maybe I won't, and that's cool too. So yeah, that's the questions. 25 minutes, 5 questions. I thought we'd get through these fairly quick, but such is the rambly Tommy. So yeah, every month we do a 1 card 47s reading for patrons where they ask a question and I take a card and I in some way interpret that as how the servants would, you know, suggest how you should look at your particular question. We also do the question and answers, which we've done today, and plenty of other things over on Discord or on Patreon. So if you want to get in on that, then the links are all in the show description and all that. But don't feel any pressure or need to do it. If you know, support me if you want to, not because you know, because I demand it. I certainly don't demand it. Yeah, so that's it. And jump on over to Discord. That's where I am most of the time. I'm trying my very best to absolutely leave Facebook. I have a little bit of time for Twitter still, but 95% of my social media is on Discord. Well, that's probably a lie. 80% is on Discord. I still have a fondness for Reddit that I spend a lot of time on too. But yeah, so good people of the internet, thank you for spending this time. And if you got to the end, fair dues to you, because that was a long haul of me rambling. And may you be well, and may your best days be ahead.